So classifying triangles, and then we're going to find interior and exterior angle measures of a triangle. So the first thing you want to do, you see you have 3 triangles at the top of the page. I would label this little section classification by sides. Classification by sides. So I would write that down. Classification by sides.
Like on the top?
On the top, yes, just like Paulo Jefferson.
Okay.
Classification by sides. So there are how many sides in a triangle?
3.
3 sides.
Yeah.
So if all 3 sides are congruent, what does congruent mean?
Equal.
Same measure. Okay, you do set them equal because they'll be the same measure. So this is actually going to be called an equilateral. So you want to put that in your first blank. 3 congruent sides is called an equilateral. No, buddy, it's up here.
Oh, my bad.
3 congruent sides is an equilateral triangle. What is the root word, do you think, in equilateral?
Equal.
Equal. And then what does lateral mean?
It's a ladder. Like adjacent.
No, like up the sides. Equal sides. Equilateral. All right, so 3 congruent sides called an equilateral. I would make sure that you wrote down that it is an equilateral as well as it has 3 congruent sides. The 3 asterisks under do not go with these pictures. So I would make sure that you note on the side of this triangle you have 3 congruent sides. How could I look at this triangle and tell I have 3 congruent sides? The little dashes. Little sticky sticks, yep. Does anybody remember what it's called when you have 2 congruent sides? Starts with an I. I'm sorry, Kimura, what was that? Isosceles. You said it after she said it. So make sure you're writing how many congruent sides there are. So this one should have 3 congruent sides. Isosceles has 2 congruent sides. I would mark that. So I would mark that this has 3 congruent sides and this has 2 congruent sides. All right, and the last that has no congruent sides. It's a weird word. No. Parallelogram has 4 sides. Triangle does have 3 sides. This is a type of triangle. It's a scalene. It's a weird word. Scalene. Not saline. Scalene. Has no congruent sides. Yep, it's weird. It leans because there's no congruent sides. The fill in the blank that you have right under it with the asterisks. I always struggle if there's an S before the K. So asterisks, I think it's called. Look like this. 3 congruent sides means you have 3 congruent angles. 2 congruent sides means you have 2 congruent angles. No congruent sides means you have no congruent angles. So I'll show you what that means. All right, so in an equilateral, so if you look, because all of these sides are equal, all of the angles will also be equal. So what will happen is every side, so look at the screen, every side corresponds with the angle across from it. Okay, so what I've highlighted, also this angle, or sorry, this side with this angle, this side with this angle, okay? So if all of those sides are the same, then the angles they correspond with will be congruent to each other. Do you understand that? The second, isosceles, okay, this side is across from the angle over there. Do you see?
Yes.
So that means this angle, because it's across from the congruent side, will also be congruent to this angle. Because these angles are across from the congruent sides, they're congruent to each other. Do you understand? So that's what this means. And none of these sides are congruent, so none of the angles will be congruent. Okay, and I'll keep showing you. There's an entire chapter over this, so you don't necessarily have to grasp it right now. Okay? The next, classifying by angles. You want to write that? Classifying by angles. It's the next 4. Classifying by angles. So right here you want to write classifying by angles. Not triangles, but by angles. So, how many types of angles are there? 5. Name a type of angle. There's a straight angle. Obtuse.
Acute.
Acute. Right.
Straight.
Okay, how many degrees is a straight angle?
180.
180. So I'm going to tell you right now, the angles of a triangle, none of them will be 180. Promise. Because they all actually add up to 180. We'll talk about it. So here's what happens. They're going to be classified. But before you write that, actually, I want you to write that they're classified by their largest angle. By the largest angle. So again, I would write that down. If I'm writing it down, you should write it down. So we classify the triangle by its largest angle. If the largest angle is less than 90, what would that mean? It's acute. If the largest angle, Josiah, was more than 90, what would that be called? Obtuse. Thank you, Josiah. You throw your voice in many directions.
Yes, it did.
If the largest angle was 90, Alex, what would that be called? Right. So look at that. You already know how to do these. The only one that you don't will probably be the second. So let's look. If you have 3 acute angles, what do you think we call that triangle?
Acute.
We call it an acute triangle.
Good job, Josiah.
Thank you.
All right, so what do we notice about this second triangle? What is happening with those angles? They're marked congruent. So if you have 3 congruent angles, so they're not called equilateral, because again, lateral means sides. They're actually going to be called equiangular. 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 No joke. Equiangular. Equi. And then you're going to write an asterisk with it. If it's equiangular, it's also equilateral. So if it's equiangular, it's equilateral also. So think about this. Remember what you wrote down. If you have 3 congruent sides, you have how many congruent angles? 3. So if you have 3 congruent angles, how many congruent sides do you have? 3. So they go together like peanut butter and jelly. Just kidding. So whenever you write, whenever you write equiangular, you will always write equilateral together. Okay, because there's no other option for them. The second, what do you notice about the largest angle?
It's 90.
It's 90, which makes it a right triangle, which you did see last year with the Pythagorean theorem. We're going to have an entire chapter over right triangles.
Yay!
Yeah, boy.
Appreciate the excitement. And then the last, what do you notice about the largest angle?
It's obtuse.
It's obtuse. We'll talk about that in a second. It's obtuse.
Why is there a hippo on the
I will show you in a second, Wyatt. So these are 4 types of classification by angle. Yes, what animal is this? A hippo. What is the side called that is across from the right angle?
Hippopotamus. No. Hypotenuse.
Hypotenuse. How is a side an angle? Hypotenuse. So here is what we will talk about. This side is very important in the right triangle community. I'm telling you right now, like at my husband's job site, all of them know, you all have heard of the Pythagorean theorem.
Yes.
A squared plus b squared. So any 3 numbers that satisfy that, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, it's called a Pythagorean triple. So like 3, 4, 5 is the most common, and it's actually going to be a bonus question on that test someday. 3, 4, 5. Anyways, because 3 squared plus 4 squared will equal 5 squared. Anyways, they actually memorize Pythagorean triples because right triangles and right angles are extremely important in construction, obviously. What do you think would happen if we didn't have right triangles?
Buildings would be
Things would be falling.
We have like Patrick. You know what I'm saying? We have like
A what?
we have,
Oh,
like,
a
dome.
Patrick, like
Yeah,
the
we have-
coconut thing?
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
dome.
Exactly.
All right, we feel it.
All right, so let's do the examples at the bottom of the page. So listen, we have a triangle. Focus, Ja'Cory.
Wait, my paper. Oh,
Letter A. Triangle ABC has 2 acute angles, 1 right angle, and 2 congruent sides. It is a blank. So we're classifying by its sides and its angles. So let's look at the angles first, because that's what it mentions, angles. What is the biggest angle here?
A.
A, which is 90. So what do we call an angle that is 90 degrees?
Right.
A right angle. So right is the first part of the classification because the largest angle is a right angle. After that, we look at the sides. What is it called when you have two congruent sides? Isosceles. ISOSCELES. Most people do not write it correctly.
Quick question, Ms. Marshall.
Yes, sir.
Are we allowed to write notes in pen?
Yes. Thank you, Javion. All right, so here's what I want to show to you. Listen. How many congruent sides were there? How many congruent angles are there? 2. Does everyone notice that the angles across from the congruent sides are also congruent to each other?
Yes.
That is on purpose. It will always happen that way. Okay? In the second problem, triangle DEF has one obtuse angle and no congruent sides. So let's classify it first by angles. What do we classify it by angles? Obtuse, because of the obtuse angle. And then what do we call it when it has no congruent sides? Scalene. I'm sure that's what you meant to say. Scalene. So remember that equilateral has 3 congruent sides, isosceles is 2 congruent sides, and scalene is the weirdest word of all. Would we agree?
Yes.
Okay, I
Besides
agree to
skew.
disagree, buddy. Besides me?
Besides skew.
I thought he said besides you.
Besides skew.
So thanks, Josiah. Yeah, what's your question?
No, I don't want to say it.
Here we go. Classifying. Next page.
Big question.
Just that.
It's scalene, right?
Scalene.
Only
L-E-N-E.
L-E. Okay.
L-E-N-E. Here we go. Next. Focus. It's actually offensive. Here we go. Let's look at the angles. What is the largest angle in the top left? So in this triangle. 60. Okay, so first off, let's talk about the measure of that. What would we classify as 60-degree angle? Acute, but what else do we notice about the angles?
They're all congruent.
They're all congruent. They're all the same.
So equilateral.
So that makes it.
Equilateral.
Equilateral, equal angle.
So first, answer the question.
I said it.
So listen. Focus. Which one means that the angles are equal? Equiangular.
I don't either. That's worse than scaling.
You're worse than scalene. All right, now what is it called when all the sides are equal? Equilateral.
Miss Marshall still on, even though she gave so that was crazy.
Miss Marshall, what? All right, next one. Let's look at the largest angle. What is the largest angle?
79.
79. We're in the top right. 79. It's okay. So 79. What kind of angle is that? Acute. Now we need to look at all the sides. What do you notice about the sides?
They're different.
They're different, which makes it scalene. I forget the little triangle symbol. Wow. So, notice this. Yes. All right, what was the largest angle?
79.
What was the largest side?
79.
8.7.
8.7 side. What do you notice about their locations? They're opposite of each other. What's the smallest side? I know I blocked it. What's the smallest side? 6.1. What is 6.1 across from? 44. What do you notice about 44? It's the smallest angle. That will always happen. Okay? Every side will correspond with the angle across from it and vice versa. Okay? The bottom left. Okay, let's look at the biggest angle. What do we think the biggest angle is? 180 looks like a straight line, so no.
I guess about
100.
Okay, we don't need to know the number. What kind of?
130.
We need to know what kind of angle it is. Obtuse.
It's about 130.
It's obtuse. What do you notice about the sides? 2 of them are congruent, which makes it isosceles. All right, and then the last, what do we notice about the largest angle? It's a right angle. If you have a right angle, there will never be any angle larger than 90. Promise you. I'll explain why at a later date. How many sides are congruent? 2 of them, which makes it isosceles again. Ta-da! Right, isosceles. Here we go.
Right, isosceles.
Yes, buddy.
Triangle.
So, listen to the next 2 parts. One of them, you won't have to write the exact definition off the screen because it's fairly simple. The other one, you need to write the definition. Okay, first one is interior. Where is the interior of anything? Inside. So this is going to be the inside of the triangle. So please don't take the time to write down this whole thing. Just write down interior, inside.
Where is it?
We didn't flip pages. We're right here. Inside of the triangle. That's all you're writing. Inside of the triangle. Those are angles inside of the triangle.
Angles
Inside of the triangle. Yes, dear. The next one, there's no other way for me to make it shorter because there's going to be a theorem about exterior angles. Okay? So I would ask you to write down the whole thing. It's a sentence. When the sides of a triangle are extended, the exterior angles are the 3 angles adjacent to the interior angles. We'll talk about it in a second. Is that another language? When the 3 sides of a triangle, are extended, meaning they continue. What does adjacent mean? Nope. What does adjacent mean, y'all?
Same. Right across from each other.
On the same line.
Like you're adjacent to him.
They share a wall.
That's right.
So adjacent, it'll pop up in blue on mine. So adjacent would be like A with the angle inside, C with the angle inside. This is called the exterior of a triangle, and it is an angle. We will talk about it. There's an entire theorem on it. It's not a tough theorem, it's just that students, if they don't learn it, if they don't do anything about it, they won't move on. Alright, here we go. We're going to do the bottom section. Solve for the missing angle and classify the triangle. So first, the sum of the measures of the interior angles of a triangle is. Does anybody know what the angles inside of a triangle add up to?
180.
180. Boom. That's the second half of the lesson.
Everyone beat it to it.
That's why it can't be more than 90.
That's why it can't be more than 90, because if two of them were 90, you wouldn't have a third angle. That's exactly why. Good thinking. All right, so we're going to solve and then classify the triangle. We're going to solve and classify. So number 1, so think about it this way. Okay? What do people like?
Pizza.
Dogs.
Shut up.
Ice cream.
No, okay, I'm not taking suggestions. Okay? I've told you this before. When we first got cell phones, you could have a certain amount of text messages come in and out every month. Okay? I know that is super hard to understand. I remember my dad going through my phone bill and being like, "You sent out 150 text messages. That was so much." Okay, I don't even want to talk about what happens these days. So, here's what happens. You can have 180 total fit inside of a triangle. We need to see how much we already have in the triangle to find out how much can fit out of the 180. So, here's what we're going to do. First thing, okay, here's the math way to do it. You know all 3 of these angles add up to what number? 180. So, technically, you could add them.
125.
I'm getting there, buddy. You could add them. You could add them. What do I call the last angle? I don't know.
Question mark.
I can call it X. They add up and they equal what number?
180.
180. So that is the math way to do it. Technically, if you want to set up an equation, you can. But you don't have to. Here's what I normally see. How can I figure out how many degrees I already have inside of the triangle? Add them. So I already have 55. We have 55 degrees. and 70. We need to figure out how much they add up to. What number is that? 125. So if we already have 125 degrees in the triangle, how do we find how much more we can fit? Subtract it from what number? 180. So 180 total. We already have the 125. So how much remains? 55.
55.
55. So we've only answered half of the question. This angle is 55 degrees. That's half of the answer. What do the rest of the directions say after we find the missing angle? Classify. What is the largest angle inside of this triangle?
70.
70. What kind of angle is 70?
Cute.
It's acute. So it is acute. And then how many of these angles are the same? 2 of them. So if we have 2 congruent angles, how many congruent sides do we have?
2.
2. So what do you call a triangle that has two congruent? Yep, isosceles. Oop. Struggle bus. All right. So normally what I see, because remember how you have no work, no credit written on your syllabus how many times? 4 times? Normally what I see is like simple math like addition and subtraction. I'm fine with that work. Okay, you don't have to make an equation. Normally students don't, and I'm fine with that. Number 2, what do we do first to figure out how many degrees we already have? Add them. 35 and 85, which make 120. What do I do once I know the information? Subtract from 180. So how many degrees fit? 60. And then we are going to classify. What is the largest angle here? 85, which is acute. Are any of these angles the same? No. So if there are 3 completely different angles, how many sides are going to be congruent? None of them. So that would make it scalene. All right, move on to the next page. We're almost finished. We do the same exact thing, but now we have x's. This section says solve for x, so that is exactly what we will do. You definitely need to set up an equation. Please don't try to work around it because there's no telling what you're doing and if you're going to get it correct. Okay, so here's what I suggest you do. Add them. So it'd start with 55. Then add x plus 74. Then add 54. What do we know that they will equal? 180. So once we have an equation, we can combine like terms. What does 55, 74, and 54 make? Pretty sure it's 183. Yes, no, maybe so. 183. Okay, so I combine all those numbers. Now what do I do to finish solving for x? Subtract what? 183.
Oh,
So I get x equals negative 3. It asked me to solve for x. I did just that. So can you get a negative x? Yes. Can you have a negative angle? No. Here's what you can do to check. I would plug it in. Plug in our negative 3 plus 74. What's negative 3 plus 74? 71. Is that a positive angle? Yeah. So this is fine. You can get a negative x. You cannot get a negative angle. Okay? How could I triple check that I did this correctly? Plug it in, then what should I do after that?
Add them all up.
Add them up, and what should they equal?
180.
180. Okay, you could add up 55, 54, and 71, and they would equal 180. All right, we're going to do the same thing on the next problem. We're going to add them. So we'll have 8x plus 2. Add it to 70. Add it to 60. And what will it equal? 180. So we do the same thing. We add all of our numbers up. At this point in time, they're all next to each other. So what is 2 plus 70 plus 60? 132. All right, so what do I do next? Subtract what? 132 on both sides. So 8x equals 48. Divide by 8, and we get x equals 6. Alright. In the next section, we do the same exact thing, but what do the directions say in our next section? Find the measure of angle A. So do we stop at x equals? No, because we haven't fully answered the question. Okay, so in this section, we will do the same exact thing, except for we have to plug it in at the end. So we're going to add them all up. So we're going to take x plus 59, add it to 84, add it to x plus 51, and they will equal 180. All right, so what does x and x make? 2x. X times x makes x squared. All right, then I add up all of my numbers. So I'm going to add up 59, 84, and 51. I believe it's 194.
Yes.
We agree?
Yes.
That's good. My brain still works. Once we have 194, what do we do? Subtract it. Alright, so I still drop down my 2x. What is 180 minus 194? Negative 14. Divide by negative 2, and x equals? Negative 7. Do I circle this answer?
No.
Did I answer the question? No. It asked me what the measure of angle A was. And the measure of angle A currently equals x plus 51. Do we know what x is?
Yeah.
What's x?
-7.
Negative 7. What's negative 7 plus 51? 44 degrees. All right, we're going to do the last one together. We're almost finished. Here we go. So this one, what kind of triangle do we have?
Right.
A right triangle. Well, I'm not asking about that. We don't know that yet. It's a right triangle, because I know it's a right angle. So we do the same exact thing. We're going to add up all the sides, or sorry, all the angles. So we're going to have x plus 37. We're going to add it to x plus 67. And add it to what other number?
90.
90, because that box means 90. Good job. And again, what do they all equal? 180. All right, so let's combine our x's. What's x plus x? 2x. All right, next we add 37, 67, and 90, which makes 194 again. It's such a popular number. Subtract 194. I'm getting there. 2x equals negative 14. So then what does x equal? Negative 7. Did it ask me what x was? No. It asked me to find the measure of angle A. So I need to do what? Plug it in.
Sorry, Mrs. Buck said I can borrow a stapler.
Yes, ma'am. It's on my desk. All right, so we plug it back in. We got the measure of angle A equals x plus 37. Hold on. So we know we plug in negative 7 plus 37, which is how many? 30 degrees. Sorry, I ran out of room up there. Is there a way I could triple check it? Add them all up. So I have 90 plus 30. Okay, how can I figure out what the other angle is? Plug it in there. What's negative 7 plus 67? 60. What is 60 plus 30? 90 plus 90 is? 180. Okay, so I did this one correctly. All All right, take out your review sections and switch them.